Welcome YouTube and fellow Star Wars collectors. On this episode of Toys Are the Way, I will be sharing my process for a recent Mandalorian Throne Room build. If you're new to the channel, a fan of the vintage collection, and enjoy dioramas, be sure to hit that like button and remember to subscribe for more future videos. To my subscribers who have returned, thank you very, very much. I truly appreciate your support. With that being said, let's get started. Since the announcement of the vintage collection Mandalorian and Maul, I've had a plan to build this throne room. I wanted to display and recreate these memorable scenes from the Clone Wars series. I did have somewhat of a plan, but mostly just the initial idea, which is the most important part of any project. To start, I want to give a big thank you to 2797 Studios for providing me with this wonderful 3D print. Their products are of the highest quality and packaged with great care. This throne of Mandalore comes in a few separate pieces, allowing for easy painting. It would be a bit more challenging to have to carefully paint the many sections of the throne, specifically the intricate window frame, so it's a relief to know this process will be smooth. The throne itself is very impressive and has lots of detail throughout. It has a nice clean finish with no harsh lines from the filament, which will leave us with minimal to no sanding and prep work. Always a plus. I previously purchased the Book of Boba Fett throne from them, and I strongly recommend it. It was a fun painting project and a must for any collector who wishes to display their future vintage collection Boba Fett figure from that upcoming series. If you're interested in the throne or their other products, be sure to check them out on Instagram, and I'll leave a link in the description down below. I wanted my throne room to be as screen accurate as possible, therefore I needed to add the remaining stairs as seen in the Clone Wars. To do this, I'm going to use a sheet of 1/2 inch thick foam board from the craft store. To begin measuring, I carefully placed the throne in the center of the material. I also used a scrap of plastic that was exactly 1 inch wide to help measure and start mapping out the octagon stair shape. With the plastic firmly up against the throne, I aligned it to each angle of the stair and marked a line. This provided me with an accurate sketch to then expand on and create the largest stair needed that would serve as the main platform. The other levels will rest on top of this surface, and the final product would have the total of 5 steps, including the 2 from the throne. Then, using a straight edge and sharp blade, I began to cut out the stair. Foam board isn't the easiest material to work with, and at times it requires an extra cut from the back side. The foam encased within is also very brittle and does not always produce a clean cut, but that's okay because I plan to cover it up with another material. Next, I traced the cutout shape onto the foam board and then used the plastic piece to subtract 1 inch of width from the shape. This will provide us with the next stair level. Once everything's marked off, cut out the stair shape. Here you can see the smaller shape placed on top of our initial piece, gradually creating our stairs. Repeat the process one more time to create the last smaller stair in the set. To clean these up and give them a smooth, uniform look, I'm going to use styrene sheets I purchased on Amazon. This is a great crafting material and it's easy to work with. Place the shape on top of the material and trace an outline. Use a ruler to clean this up if need be. Then, using a pair of scissors, cut out the shape. These thin sheets of plastic cut with great ease, making them a joy to work with. Next, we will cover up the edges. Place the foam piece on its side and trace it to create a strip of material that will properly cover the edge. Cut the desired strip with scissors and then it can be applied to the stair. In order to ensure it's flush, I mark the material at the corners of the octagon and gently bent the strip back using a ruler. This will allow the strip to lay flat against the stair. Repeat the same process, marking the remaining corners of the octagon and bending the strip with the ruler. This will provide us with a strip that covers nearly the entire edge. But as you can see, the material is not long enough to do so, therefore an extra piece is needed in order to finish it off. For the final and largest stair, I had to make 2 separate end caps to finish off the strip of material. The 8x11 styrene sheets present this coverage issue, and there are larger options available if you desire, but this is what I had on hand and was able to make it work. To attach the styrene to the foam, I'm going to use super glue. Apply a small amount to the strip, position it accordingly, and then apply pressure to one of the sides for 10 seconds. Once there is a bond, apply pressure to the remaining sides until the strip is fully attached. Apply glue to the end piece and bond it in place. Repeat this step on both sides to finish off the strip. Next, we will attach the material to the top of the foam. Line up the styrene on top and glue half of it down. Once a bond is formed, lift the remaining half up and glue it into position. Once everything is secure in place, we will have a nice, smooth plastic step. Use the same glue and application method to finish the construction of each level, providing us with a glorious staircase up to our Mandalore throne. Lastly, we will glue each level together. Line them up and mark them with a pencil. Then, lock them in place with a piece of tape. Lift up the bottom section, apply glue, and then hold it firmly as it bonds. Then implement the same for the next level, removing the blue tape once it's complete. Now that the steps are complete, we will need to create a back wall. This will consist of 3 8x11 sheets and a few strips of material. First, I wanted to cut out the window that rests behind the throne itself. My intent is to have red light glowing through the final product as seen in the Clone Wars. So I traced the window element and then cut out the shape using an X-Acto blade. And here you can see the red light effect that I'm looking for. Using sheets of scrap material from the stairs, I cut 1-inch strips of styrene that would serve as pillars and reliefs, giving the wall less of a flat appearance. I traced and cut out several of these with scissors and then placed them on edges where the sheets overlapped. This would help those areas blend in nicely and closely match what's seen in the animated series. I also added 3 8x5 sheets to give the wall some extra height. To create the 2 sets of windows, I used the throne element to easily map this out. I lined it up to an appropriate height and began to trace the window, moving the printed piece up the wall. I did the same for the next window, but would finish off the bottom area using the angles from the print. This worked really well to create that trapezoid appearance seen in the Mandalorian architecture. I then ensured both windows were level and finished off the top. Originally, I planned to cut out the framing of the window, but quickly realized I had a better plan for it, so I moved on to cutting out the entire window shape. I taped the material together and then cut out the shapes using an X-Acto. This would serve as a stencil to trace and cut the other set of windows. Moving on, the next step is to paint the panels. Using some simple gray primer by Rust-Oleum, lightly coat the styrene from a 6-inch distance. This material accepts paint very well. It shouldn't require many coats and will dry with a matte finish. Apply the primer to the stairs as well. For the 3D printed elements, I used a white primer by Kills. This paint is heavy and essential to providing a base coat that will help fill and eliminate any cross hatches from the print. It's also sandable if you wish to further smooth your project. Allow it to dry for 30 minutes and then apply the gray primer. For the smaller elements of the throne, I opted for a specialty item. I used Montana Gold spray paint. You could pick this up at your local art store, and the color I'm using is Scampy. This is a low-pressure acrylic-based orange paint that is far superior in coverage and better matches the throne color than any hardware store options. I finished off the window frame with some Rust-Oleum flat black and allowed everything to dry for an hour or so. Here you can see our primed throne looking nice and smooth. You can also see that our wall panels have now dried with a nice matte finish. Earlier on, I decided that transparency film and a black Posca paint marker would be a much easier solution for the windows. Therefore, I aligned a sheet of film and taped it into place. This material is cheap and easily found on Amazon. I traced the window outlines on a sheet of paper, sketched my design, and then aligned it behind the wall. Then, using my marker, I carefully painted on the design. These Posca paint markers are my absolute go-to for crafting projects. The ink is very opaque and dries quickly with little to no smearing. The combination of materials was a breeze to work with, and significantly easier than attempting to cut out the window frames by hand. To finish them off, I shaved off the excess material with an X-Acto blade. Next, I'm going to mount the walls onto a 1/4-inch thick foam board. The window areas will be cut out, allowing light to shine through. Normally, I would mount walls and dioramas on a hefty material like XPS foam, but I don't have space to display this throne right now. Therefore, I wanted something that I could easily fold up for the time being until I could make a proper display. So I attached each section to the foam board with some blue tape. Moving on, I wanted to add some proper weathering to all the elements of the throne room. I used my go-to mixture of black, green, and brown acrylic paints and watered them down to create a wash. I applied the wash using the same techniques that can be seen in my other diorama and tutorial videos, so be sure to check those out if you're interested on how to do this. I wanted the throne itself to have some grime and buildup, but nothing too overwhelming, so I applied moderate amounts of wash to key areas such as the corners, edges, stairs, and the seat area. Once applied, I used a paper towel and downward motions to smear the wash, followed by a dry brushing to further work in the paint. For the orange accent pieces, I used some brown, burnt sienna paint with a hint of wash color to lightly weather these elements. I didn't want to take away from the nice bright color, so I applied this very subtly and brushed it away. Although I did want the seat cushion to have an aged look, therefore I applied more paint here and worked it in several times with a dry brush until I got the desired look. I finished off the flowers with a very light coat and brushing. The walls seen in Clone Wars Season 7 had a dark and weathered appearance to them, full of history and battles. Naturally, I wanted my build to have that same feeling. I applied a coat of wash and then some non-diluted mixture to the details and edges of the wall and brushed that in. I focused my weathering in these areas as well as the edges of the floor and ceiling, with smaller stains sprinkled randomly throughout, all the while using my paper towel to gently smear and work in the paint. Once I reached the desired appearance from a few coats, I wanted to add a hint of rust to some areas. To do this, I'm going to create a wash using a dime's worth of burnt sienna mixed with only a small dash of our initial wash color. Using a smaller brush, I added the rust color to key areas of the walls, but keeping the application minimal. I wanted to highlight only certain edges and areas that I felt would benefit from this color addition, while still looking fluid and natural. Apply the rusty wash first, followed by some less diluted mixture, then brush it downward to get a runoff effect. A proper throne display would not be complete without the appropriate floor. I primed 3 sheets of styrene and cut a strip out of the middle section. This would serve as a walkway up to the throne area, giving the floor some more dimension. I dirtied these up, concentrating on the areas where each section would meet, since naturally this is where grime and buildup would form on flooring tiles. I applied a few layers of weathering and scuff marks until the flooring had a rough yet cohesive appearance. In order to keep the wall structure standing up for my photography and scenes, it will require a base to support the weight. Since I wanted to keep everything as compact as possible, I simply taped another sheet of foam to create an L shape that would help it stand but could be folded up and put away easily. Now that the throne has been weathered and allowed to dry, we can finally assemble it. Super glue is recommended for this step, but I wanted to use a different approach in case there were any touch-ups or changes I wanted to apply later. Therefore, I opted to assemble my throne elements using Elmer's tack. If you're familiar with any of my projects, you'll know this is a tool I use frequently. It's an adhesive putty used for hanging decorations, but offers a strong bond, leaving no residue. Apply small amounts of putty to the throne and then secure in place. Some of the smaller pieces will only require the slightest amount of putty for construction and to prevent any bleeding. The window frame slides in place and locks in easily. It comes with a separate piece that I painted orange, giving the effect of glass, but I don't actually plan to use it. Instead, I'm going to use some sheets of color transparency that I also got off Amazon. This combination of red and light orange is just what I needed. A blue sheet is also included in the pack and is perfect for the other windows. I measured and cut an extra strip to finish off the height of the blue window, then simply taped all the corners in place. Once fully assembled, the color transparencies really add a nice visual effect to the diorama. With all the pieces finally coming together, I started to lay down the floor sections, added the stairs, and then placed the throne on top accordingly. At last we have the final product, and it looks remarkable, but there is one thing missing: figures. The new TVC Maul and Ahsoka Mandalore are wonderful accomplishments by Hasbro, and deserve to be displayed in the best of settings. Since their announcement, I've had this throne room vision, and I'm happy to finally have it completed. I look forward to filling this diorama with more future TVC releases, specifically the newly announced Mandalorian Death Watch Airborne Troopers. It's also very likely we will see this setting in future episodes of the Mandalorian series, so it'll be fun recreating those scenes as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video and find it informative for your future projects. Please feel free to leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments down below. Are you excited for the upcoming Mandalorian series? Did the recent announcement of Death Watch figures excite you? I'd love to hear about it. And please remember to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really helps and is greatly appreciated. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.